G'day fellas, welcome to the Forming Men Podcast Season 1. I'm Jon Tyson, a pastor and author in New York City, joined by my friend Jefferson Bethke, a writer and teacher over in Hawaii. And we are talking about the challenges of what it means to be a man in our cultural moment, as well as what it looks like to be formed into the image of Jesus. Thanks for joining us for Season 1. Hey fellas, before we start, I wanted to let you know how to get Jefferson and Mai's newest book, Fighting Shadows, completely free a few months before it comes out. We're building a fun launch team for the book, which means really just reading it and letting us know what you think. We'd love to have you on the team and send you a copy early. For more info and to sign up, you can go to fightingshadows.co.
Hey you guys, welcome back to the Forming Men Podcast.
What's up? Let's go.
We're so excited to see you guys and chat with you guys. As you know, this is a dedicated Q&A episode where we try to discuss and make it a two-way street based on your feedback, your thoughts, your questions from last week's episode. So we usually can make it through maybe 2, maybe 3 if we're going fast. But if John, like last one, wants to give us a PhD, we're just going to leave it at that because it's so incredible and amazing. But are you ready for the first one?
Yeah, let's go.
Here we go.
Hey, thank y'all so much for the podcast. My name is Justin, and I'm from Midwest City, Oklahoma. And the question I had was, how do you communicate well that a redirect should happen with somebody who's so used to feeling like their masculinity has been repressed, and now they've gone too much on the other side, and you're trying to communicate to point it back to Jesus? How do you suggest doing that without making them feel like they're being repressed again? Thank you, guys.
Justin, great question. I also hope you got where you were going with the blinker on. I don't know if you're going left or going right, but that was fun. Hey, that's a real question, and that's an honest question. You're kind of calling back to episode 1, but I still think it's pertinent in the first couple episodes that we've been discussing with you. And it sounds like you're not here in the room, so you can't affirm if this is right or wrong, but it sounds like you're asking that one of your friends is overcompensating and is kind of, doing the language that we used as releasing it, kind of an unhinged, overcranked vision of masculinity. And you are asking, how do I kind of maybe challenge them in a kind spirit? How do I kind of like engage with them and say, hey, I think kind of your North Star, your telos is a little bit different than Jesus. Like it doesn't look like your version of masculinity is Jesus' version of masculinity. First of all, I want to honor your heart. I love that you want to have that conversation with a brother of yours. 2, I'm hoping if he's a good friend of yours too, like I would deeply respect any brother that comes to me with that type of spirit. So I would say stay in the spirit that you just asked the question in. That's number 1. It's amicable, it's kind, it's gentle, it's gracious, while still being like, hey, you're disagreeing and you're challenging. So what I would say is I don't even think you have to be specific to the masculine conversation. I mean, I think you do. That's what John's going to talk about next. But I would say start with, obviously, and maybe this is basic to you, but I think I'm always reminding myself of this with difficult conversations, of all of the basic wisdom about how to have difficult conversations. One surprising book that you would not think is on this is Never Split the Difference, kind of negotiating book.
I love
incredible
Never
book.
Split the Difference.
Yeah, incredible book. And everything from mirroring that he talks about in there.
I wanted to skim it and I had to go back and read it.
It's so good. It's one of those books that you can see why it sold so many copies because it's beautiful. It's not about conflict conversations, but I think it's absolutely deeply applicable because there's a lot of difficult conversation stuff in there. And so great tactics in there. I would say one thing too is one thing that I do in a lot of difficult conversations is I'm constantly, while I'm coming to that person, trying to repeat back to them what they said just to make it sound like we're clear. And on top of that, they feel very loved. Because anytime you're repeating something back to someone that they're saying or that they're seeing, or you're empathizing, so you're even saying, hey, what I think I see in you is, or what I'm guessing you consider is, like when you're trying to name their feelings and their thoughts, then what I would say is do that. And then they'll feel seen. They feel deeply seen. So that would be my wisdom before you jump in, is just all the stuff on healthy conversations, healthy conflict, ways to challenge, mirroring, empathizing, kindness. There's some pretty basic tactics that you could probably find in 10 minutes that really do work wonders on just opening the conversation to stay open. But now with the actual conversation at heart, what would you say of, okay, your friend is kind of over cranking the dial a little bit on masculinity. It's looking a little more, Western Americanized than it needs to. It's not looking like Jesus. What do you say to that?
Well, this is a natural reaction in any area of your life. When you feel repressed, reacting in the opposite spirit feels amazing. Yeah. You try and eat super healthy and then you give up and it feels amazing. It doesn't matter which area of your life that is in. So it's obviously, he's probably feeling great right now, feeling like his true self, feeling like he can flex and be who he wants to be. I think that will wear off over the course of time. And so you want to be one of those people, who shows him a better way. I think we have to embody what we want other people to see. So we have to be the change. It's all that sort of thing. He's got to look at you and go, hey, my masculinity is a little too far dialed up, but I'm looking at yours, and yours is, there's something you got that I feel like I don't have, or this is too much. So I think the first thing you can do is model it. Another thing I think it's important to, whenever you're talking to people like this, is to try and show them that overcompensation will not lead to happiness. One of my mentors always says spiritual warfare. So here's normally what happens, okay? So you've got people who abuse something, and then the opposite reaction is to swing to another kind of abuse. And the solution is proper use. Yeah. And so what the goal is to sort of help him get back towards the middle. And so maybe this is like, why don't you say to him like, hey, why don't we spend some time actually looking at the life of Jesus? Have you ever bothered to study the gospel? There's tons of different ways of studying the gospel. You can look at the core scenes of Jesus, the core sayings of Jesus, the core miracles of Jesus. And Jesus was not a weak man. This is a man who had the courage to go to the cross. This is a man that knows what it's like to be betrayed, yet keep his integrity. This was a man, as it says, was tempted in every way like we are, yet he did not give in. Jesus is a man in full. And so painting that beautiful, compelling vision of Jesus in his fullness, not the sort of caricatured vision. So maybe a part of it is getting together and talking through the person of Jesus. That may sound too cliche, but I promise you, if you get him in the Word, you know what you get? The Holy Spirit working with him. You know what you get? The living and active Word getting into his heart. It's not just you arguing or talking or debating or criticizing or even pleading to his heart. You put him back in front of the person of Jesus. The Bible says that's how we're transformed from one degree of glory to another. It's when we behold him and when we see him. So I don't know if he's open to that, if there's a way that you can make that possible, but that's what I do. The other thing I would say is maybe bringing in somebody else, an older mentor that both of you respect, who can show you what a proper man is actually like. Someone a few stages ahead of you. If you're single, this is someone who may be married. If you don't plan on getting married, someone who has lived a godly celibate life in a single state, who can show you how to do that in a proper way. Get mentors who are above you if you feel like it's just too much of a peer dynamic, who can speak into that situation.
I love that. Justin, that's a really good question. And again, I just want to make sure we honor your heart in that. Thank you for asking that. And we'll be praying for you in those conversations. And I appreciate that big time. All right. Question number 2.
Hey, John. Hey, Jeff. This is Paul and Cappy. I'm from Queens, New York. John, I'm going to visit your church one day, I promise, and I'm excited to see you and hear your sermons. I love them. Jeff, you're cool too. But my question is, what is at stake if, as a Christian man, we don't live out our calling Jesus has on our life? Thanks.
Paul, this is an exceptional question. First of all, thank you for saying I'm cool too. I appreciate that. I live a lot farther than you.
Queens is the new Brooklyn.
Hey, there you go.
Just so you know.
Paul knows what's up. Hey, exceptional question. You basically said, what is at stake if we do not live our godly calling as a man? Let me just give you an answer in short. What's at stake is everything. Literally everything. Agree. I don't want to put a pressure on your shoulders, but actually hopefully put more of a legacy vision on your shoulder, that everything is at stake. Everything. I think this is true of women and other people as well, but men specifically, because I'm talking to men. This is a men's podcast. You have a zone of influence. You have a sphere of influence. That can be your spouse, that can be your kids, that can be your coworkers, that can be your city, that could be your neighbors, could be, you know who those are. Okay. If you are not living up to your full potential as an image bearer of God, in his image, formed by him deeply, becoming more and more like Jesus every single day, then all of their lives are at stake. I don't want to overcrank the severity, but all of their lives are at stake. That's what it means. Like, we're so individualistic in Western culture that we do not believe we live in a complex web of human relationships. And when you pull out one person and they're not living in their destiny and in their legacy, it deeply affects a city, a place, a person, a neighbor, a coworker, a marriage, and kids, and grandkids, all these things. And so I would say that's what I want to start with before John goes is, man, I do want to overcrank and let you know that like everything is at stake, and that is a gift to realize that your legacy, your destiny, the image of what Jesus wants to form you into, that finish line version of you that he is calling you into, if you abdicate that, everything is at stake, not just for you, but for your entire zone of influence.
Dude, I love that idea of putting the communal influence on that. I think that's super important. We were created for 4 relationships as men: a relationship with God, a relationship with ourselves, a relationship with others, and a relationship with the world. And what's at stake is that you fail in those 4 relationships. You don't relate to God properly. That means that you miss out on intimacy, you miss out on power, you miss out on provision. If you're prideful, God will be against you. God resists the proud, opposes the proud. So instead of having the help of heaven, you have the resistance of heaven. Nobody wants that. Secondly, so you miss out on intimacy with God, influence with God, and his help in your life, tangibly stepping in. That means you have to face life alone with your own resources and hustle. That will greatly diminish your ability to live well in the world. Secondly, your relationship with yourself. How are you going to form your identity apart from God? It's going to be a shallow surface shifting identity. It's going to be based on your looks, your income, your performance, your relationships. All of these things are transitory and temporary at best. So you're going to have a fragile sense of self. And so you're not going to have a secure identity, the spirit of adoption. You're going to have an orphan spirit, which means you don't trust anybody. You think it's all up to you, and you're radically insecure. Number 3, relationships with others. If you're not like Jesus, you're going to be selfish. You're going to use people instead of serving people. You're going to care about yourself, and you're going to push people away from you. This will happen in the world, in your workplace, if you turn people into a commodity. This will happen in the church if you fail to use your gifts and build one another up. The church won't be what it's meant to be, because every part plays a role. And as Jefferson mentioned, this will impact the legacy you leave in the world. And so you're called to make a difference. All it takes for evil to triumph is good men do nothing. You do nothing, evil spreads in the world. So much is at stake. And I'm just talking about this life. You're going to miss out on eternal rewards. 1 Corinthians 3 says we're going to stand before Jesus and give an account. And our works are going to be judged. They're going to be tried by fire and tested. And if we've done it for ourselves, it's going to burn up and it's not going to result in anything. If we've done it for the Lord, gold, silver, precious stones, eternal rewards. So here's my answer to you. Young man, thank you for this question. I love the borough of Queens. You matter. Your life matters. We need you to reach your full redemptive potential. There is good works prepared in advance for you to walk in. Do not be like Demas, because he loved this world. He shrunk back. Be like Paul, who says, I fought the fight, I've run the race, and now laid up for me is a crown of righteousness. Fix your eyes on eternity. Lift your heart. I think that's going to put you in a good space for the years ahead.
Amen. Paul, you got both of us fired up, so hopefully you like that answer. It was a great question. Now, to the rest of you, as always, keep asking the questions, keep sending them in. If they're shorter, concise, and clear, it's more likely we will include them. Email the voice notes to jeff@formingmen.com and try to ask a specific question to the previous week's topical episode. Love you guys. See you next week. Hey, you guys, thanks so much for watching and listening to this podcast. One fun thing that we want to do is kind of every other week or sprinkled throughout the big episodes that me and John are recording is we want to answer and do episodes of your guys' questions to the last episode or the last couple weeks' episodes. So the way we want to do that is we want it in your own voice. We want to hear you ask the questions. So if you want to ask a question that we will answer on the podcast, email a voice note. So record it on your iPhone and email it to us at jeff@formingmen.com. Now, 1 or 2 caveats. The shorter, the better. The more concise, the better. So maybe try to say it once or twice before you send in the recording. And also make sure to give us your name and your location, and we would love to answer them. So again, record a voice note of a question to the previous week's podcast. Send it to me at jeff@formingmen.com. We'll try to answer them.